This is 5th grade social studies, week 28, the Constitution. We're in part 2. You need to look on the inside of your newspaper all the way onto the right side. We're starting to talk about the Article 3, the judicial branch or the judges. We've got some of that highlighted from part 1. We're going to pick up at section 2 to make sure that we get everything done. In section 2, it says, the office of the judiciary will extend to all cases of law arising under the Constitution. It also covers the laws of the United States and all controversies between states and citizens. So that means like between different states, between a citizen and its state, or between two citizens within a state. So that means like criminal law and then civil law as well. If you get in trouble, like you're arrested and you face court charges, that's a criminal kind of situation. If a private person is suing you for some other reason, that's more of a civil thing. But either way, all of those go under our judiciary system all the way around. Section 3 says, treason against the United States is defined. Treason is the giving aid and comfort to enemies or waging war against the United States. And we are going to highlight that section 3 real quick because that, I'm pretty sure that's going to be on your test. So we want to make sure to get all of section 3 highlighted. And then when you're done with that, we're going to go down to the bottom, all the way to the left-hand side, where it talks about Article 4. Article 4 is the relations of the states to each other. So how one state, like Kansas, relates to another state, like Nebraska. Article 4 establishes relations between the states. It also defines the state's relationships with the federal government. The citizens of each state shall be entitled to all the privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states, and that simply means like you're entitled to privileges and rights as a U.S. citizen, whether you're in Kansas or whether you're in Nebraska. It doesn't matter which state you're in. And we are going to highlight this section right here. Then we are also going to highlight all of this section 1 right here as well. I need to scoot down a little bit. And then we're going to go down to section 2. Criminals must be returned to their state of citizenship by state law enforcement agencies. Any person held to service or labor who escapes into another state will be delivered to the person who claims their labor. So that simply means if you are in jail in Kansas and you escape and you run away to Nebraska, Nebraska must return you to Kansas to continue whatever term of imprisonment or charges that you have to deal with. You can't just escape them by running away to another state. We're going to highlight that real quick. Then we're going to move down to section 3. Admission of new states to the Union is held in Congress. Congress can change any state boundaries when deemed necessary. State constitutions are to be a representative democracy like the federal government. The states will be protected by the national government against invasion or violence within the state. So I'm going to say we're going to highlight just the section 3 title right here. So let's highlight that. And then states will be protected by the national government against an invasion or violence within the state. And that simply means, like particularly like with our border states, that if another country comes in and tries to invade us through that state, the national government will come in and protect the people living there, regardless of what state it is in. You can see that happening right before we entered World War II, when the state of Hawaii, it wasn't technically a state at the time, but it was a territory, and so because it had the rights and privileges to be protected by the national government, the government came in and was able to protect it. We're now going to go scooch over to Article 5. Let's scoot down a little bit. Article 5 is amending the Constitution. Amending, like an amendment, it simply means to change it or alter it in some way. Okay. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution. And we're going to highlight, because that's pretty important right there. That is simply stating that if something needs to change within the Constitution, both the House of Representatives and the Senate must agree by 2/3. Like 2/3 of the people in each of those have to agree before they can move forward with the amendment. Article 5. Unique to the United States government, this article defines the process of changing the Constitution. Other governments have to create an entirely new government or constitution. This usually was done through much conflict. Any amendments to the Constitution must have the people involved in writing, reviewing, and ratification. Since 1789, 33 amendments have been introduced over the years, but only 27 have been ratified. And that means that 33 amendments have been proposed. They have been said, hey, let's look at this. Let's look at making these changes. But of that 33, only 27 were agreed upon. Only 27 passed. And so that's why we have 27 amendments. So we are going to highlight all of that, and then we're going to highlight all of that as well. I'm going to scooch down here to get my highlighter real quick. So both of those sections need to be highlighted for Article 5. Then I'm going to move down. One amendment that failed to be ratified, meaning it didn't pass, it's not an amendment, it wasn't approved, was the Titles of Nobility. This amendment would have taken U.S. citizenship from any American who accepted a title of nobility from a foreign country. The last amendment that was introduced was in 1985. The District of Columbia, like Washington, D.C., D.C. is District of Columbia, would have been treated as a state. The ratification process ended without the required votes for passage. Now we're going to move on to Article 6. Article 6, the Supreme Law of the Land. Article 6, this article provided for the peaceful transfer of power from the Articles of Confederation to the new federal government. So right after the Revolutionary War, they wrote the Articles of Confederation, and that's what they were using as a form of federal government, and then they realized that it wasn't working, so they got rid of the Articles of Confederation and wrote this Constitution instead. And that is what we have had ever since. The new government honored all debts and contracts made by the Confederation Congress. This also established the Constitution as the supreme law of the land. No state could go against the Constitution. This article established the strong federal government wanted by many Federalists. We're going to highlight that part real quick. There are still many parts of the country that supported state rights. All disagreements went to the Supreme Court to be resolved. The senators and representatives and members of the several state legislatures and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution, but no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. That means that you cannot be denied working for the government simply because of your faith practice or what religion that you participate in. We're going to scooch on over next, the ratification process. The final article of the Constitution defines the process for ratification. Ratification simply means to make it binding and legal where everyone agrees to it. 9 of the 13 states, because remember there were 13 colonies fighting the Revolutionary War, and so now we're calling them states instead of colonies. So 9 out of 13 colonies had to vote to approve the Constitution to create the new government. We're going to highlight that real quick. Each state held conventions or meetings where each part of the document was discussed. The Federalists and the Anti-Federalists practiced civil discourse. Civil discourse is when each side tries to persuade people to their views and beliefs in a respectful and open manner. There we go. We're going to highlight that question. And that is another one that I'm confident is going to be on your test. There was concern about the absence of a Bill of Rights to protect individual rights. Compromises and promises were made to get the Constitution ratified by the 9 states. The states and the dates of ratification are listed here in order of ratification. And you can see on your paper the dates in an order of all of those. I'm not going to read all of that, but you can read all of that, and one of those will be part of your test. Now we're moving to the back page. I am trying to go fairly speedy, but I'm thinking we're probably going to have to do a part 3 as well. So we're going to get started as quickly as we can. On the back page, influences on the new American experiment. Members of the Constitutional Convention were students of the government. They studied different types of government from history. Some of the governments and ideas they studied included the Iroquois Confederation, the ancient Greeks, the Roman Empire, and the philosophies of the Enlightenment. So we're going to highlight that right there. That's going to be pretty important. Native Americans. The various Native American nations had diversity in government. A strong central chief made decisions for the nations. This was like a monarchy in Europe. Authority rested with one person to make decisions for the people. The Iroquois Confederation had alliances with member nations, meaning like they were all worked together. They were all friends. All of the member nations worked together for the common good. The leadership of the Iroquois was in a council of equal votes from the chief of each member tribe. The council of leaders considered the good of the people when making decisions. This type of government was modeled in the Articles of Confederation. The ancient Greeks. The ancient Greeks, who lived 2,000 years before the Constitutional Convention, had government of the people. Each free male citizen of the country voted when decisions were being made. This was called a direct democracy, meaning ruled by the people. There were 3 branches of the ancient Greek government. One branch wrote down the laws, another branch was a council of representatives, and the third branch was a court of justice, with a jury to decide cases. The ancient Greek system of direct democracy paved the way for representative democracies. This type of government was modeled in the colonial and state governments of America. And we are going to highlight, let's see, so we have the ancient Greeks. This is the group of people that this section is talking about. Each free male citizen of the country voted when decision was being made. Going down to direct democracy, the 3 branches of government. Let's go ahead. Oh, darn it. Okay, keep going down. I want to get the majority of that highlighted. So there is that. So all of that big chunk for the ancient Greeks, we're going to highlight. There's lots of important information in there. We're going to pause. I am going to have to do a part 3. So just hold on and switch over to part 3 as soon as you are done with this part 2. Thank you very much.